where the power to fly within no longer dwells. Hungry for love, the shadow cast is dark, as the burning light inside the self has lost its spark. The form of destroyers from within changes us from spirit into skin. The face in the mirror has no crown of light. The inner eye of love deceived has lost its sight. True heart, we can never be apart. I don't want it any other way. Sweet song, a soundless chant that lingers on. A fire of love creates the golden day. True heart. The art of dancing in the mind, as the silent mantra once again we find, like a shadow lifted from our very soul, as the link of love begins to take control. The mirror of illusion is no more. The travelers stand again upon the shore. A journey that has taken us so very far, from a world of mortals to a shining star. True heart, we can never be apart. I don't want it any other way. Sweet song, a soundless chant that lingers on. A fire of love creates the golden day. True heart, we can never be apart. I don't want it any other way. Sweet song, a soundless chant that lingers on. A fire of love creates the golden day. True
Om Shanti everyone. Very good morning. Today we have Geoff I. Do you know Geoff I? Anybody knows? Yes. Geoff I is very lovely child of Baba. Basically he is from Australia, but he is like Madhur Nivasi. Really very familiar with Madhur Nivasi. I've been known with Geoff I so long, like 20 years, and sometimes you feel, he's from Australia, but you feel he's from just like India, Indian brothers, really. So the nature, sanskaras, old, sometimes apart, it seems like he's from India. This is basically like my experience. But he's from Australia and got in knowledge in 1985. And he's very special soul, working with animations, VFX. If you are familiar with this whole technology, animation and VFX, then you would know like he has done several projects also. The first film of Brahma Kumaris animation, it was Discover actually. If you go on Counter or if you go on YouTube, you will find the Discover. It was the first animated movie produced by Brahma Kumaris about soul, God, karma, the cycle. So that project was done by Geoff in the beginning, 1999, So he is working with animation almost about 24 years, 25 years, very long experience. And during this lockdown, we all were using this Zoom and all, and we all were using, lot of animations of Shiv Baba, and lot of because to make people experience, we give the support of technology. So that time, lot of Shiv Baba's animation we got from David Bhai, and all over the world, the people they used different color of Shiv Baba's animation. So really very special soul. And if you go in India, like ORC, he has served there also, when ORC was there. And Geoff Bhai, if you remember, we met in Agra. The museum. The museum was, it's just near like Taj Mahal, and very good place for foreigner service because people comes around there. So when the museum was, going to build, I went there and I saw Geoff Bhai is there. He was doing something there also for art gallery. So not only in Australia, but in India also, every place he used to go for Baba's service. And he's working with Godly Wood and now in PM Park since last 10 years in Madhuban. So he's very special soul. And today he's sharing his experiences because he's quite senior in BK's life, so he will share the experience of such a relationship of both fathers. So it is privilege for us to listen such wonderful experience. Welcome, Geoff Bhai.
Okay, thank you, Shilu. Om Shanti. So that was quite an introduction. It brought up some memories I hadn't thought of in a long time. In Agra and RRC. I didn't realize I met Shelu in Agra. So when I came to Baba in 1985, of course, when we come to Baba, we're looking for Baba. We're looking for Shiv Baba. We've been doing bhakti for 2,500 years and searching for God, searching for the Supreme Being. So when I came to Baba, of course, you've found everything. It clicked, so everything just went in, and I had no doubts about anything, So, and of course, so the day after I finished the course, I started coming to Murli, and I bought every book in the center to read. No matter what they had, I just bought it and read it, and because I was very, very thirsty, for knowledge and experiences, and of course wanting to connect with Baba. But when I came to Baba, of course, there's a Brahma Baba as well, which is now the subtle father. Of course, he used to be Sakar until 1969, and when I came to Baba, I couldn't really connect with Brahma Baba. Shiv Baba was no problem whatsoever. I guess because I was concentrating on Shiv Baba, I never actually thought about Brahma Baba much. He was just there. He was part of, Brahma Kumaris. It's in the name, you know. So when I came to Baba in the first 2 to 3 years, I had a lot of visions because I was at this center and we had a lot of bhattis at the center, and every time I'd sit in a bhatti, I'd get a vision, which was very interesting. I mean, a lot of them about golden age, some about the towards the end of the cycle, some about the end of the cycle, some about the transition of the cycle, things like this, and some of them also involved Brahma Baba. So, which I guess when you, of course, we know that it's Bapdada together, there's Shiv Baba and Brahma Baba together. I mean, Brahma Baba resides now in the subtle regions after becoming avyakt, and I always liked, for me, his Brahma Baba's description of entering the subtle regions. You know, his, if you've ever read the transcript, the third day after he became avyakt, you know, they asked him about what it was like to actually leave the body and go to the subtle regions, and he said it was like changing your clothes and going into another room, you know, walking into another room. But when you come to Baba, I mean, for me, you bring obviously a lot of karmic baggage with you, you know. We've been performing karma or bad karma and good karma over the last 2,500 years, you know, so we have all of that to settle. And for many of us, I know from talking to many BKs in Australia, you know, sometimes we have karma with our own Lokik fathers, you know, because at this time Baba says, you know, you have 3 fathers. You know, you have your Lokik father, your Lokik father, and your Lokik father. So when we come to Baba, I mean, how our relationship was with our Lokik father can obviously influence how we see the Lokik father, Brahma Baba, and his role, as well as the Lokik father, you know, Shiv Baba. Because, I mean, the father figure is a very powerful figure in, you know, in the families. So how our relationship sometimes can reflect our connection or our understanding or our willing to have a connection and understand the subtleties and the role of Brahma Baba and Shiv Baba, you know, together. I mean, I like some of the latest aajkimurlis that we've had, you know, about, because Shiv Baba is talking about, you know, of course he cannot do anything without Brahma Baba. You know, he comes into Brahma Baba, he uses Brahma Baba, he uses his body as an instrument, plus he uses him in order to teach as well, which is why Brahma Baba is called the moon of knowledge, you know, because he is the first one to hear Shiv Baba. Plus, of course, when Shiv Baba's in Brahma Baba, and not just for the Murli as well, throughout, you know, different parts of the day, either writing letters to the children and things like that, Brahma Baba also gets all the subtle sort of inclinations that come, the subtle thoughts from Shiv Baba, you know, because they're sharing the same space, basically, you know, sitting side by side in the same sort of, same head. So, I mean, so his insights were, must have been very, very deep. I mean, if you think about it, very subtle as well. So for me, it took a while to connect with Brahma Baba, because funnily enough, when I came to Baba, I was very angry with Brahma Baba. It was very strange, but when I came to Baba, I mean, I was only 23 when I came to Baba, so I wasn't that old, and I wasn't that young. So, I mean, but when I came to Baba, of course, a lot of things opened up. And like I said, I had a lot of visions as well. But I also had a lot of memories from the past and my past life. And Shailu's introduction was very interesting, because he said he felt like I'm a Bharatwasi, and because, you know, I started very early on remembering my life as a Bharatwasi in my last life. You know, I remembered being an old Mataji here in India, you know, and being with Baba sort of in the last part of your life, you know. So obviously when you're in an older body and you come to Baba, you've got a limited amount of time to study before obviously something goes wrong with the body, you know, and you have to leave it, you know. So the thoughts I kept having when I came to Baba, and this anger towards Brahma Baba, and all these thoughts kept coming that the last time I saw you, and I was talking to him, last time I saw you, you were still in the body, and since that time you have become avyakt, and I've just taken rebirth back into the old world, you know. So that was the source of the anger, was I was incensed. I thought it was very unfair, you know, that he became avyakt and, you know, I just took rebirth again, which later on was I found very funny, you know, because as a foreigner, when well, for me anyway, as a foreigner, one of the things, because of all these memories coming up, the question always arose that why did I take birth in Australia, you know, in a foreign body, you know, what was the reason for it? You know, obviously we have karma, you know, we have to take birth where we have to settle some karma, and my grandparents were English, so I have some karma with the British from a few births ago, and there's a very interesting story about that. All this, again, anger came up towards the British when I was reading the introduction to the rise and fall of the British Raj in India, and all these thoughts came flooding about how to kick these, and I won't use the word I said in my head, out of India, you know, all these emotions came up about how to get rid of the British out of India. So I must have sort of like had a bit of a stoush with the British here in India. But these sorts of thoughts kept coming up very early on, you know, because when you come to Baba's giving a lot of energy to new children. You know, you have something called the honeymoon phase. You know, you come to Baba, you're flying, you know. And I first met Baba, I first came to Madhuban in 1986 in February, March. And of course in those days, Baba was coming twice a week, I think, you know. And you had personal meetings with Baba. So I had my personal meeting, and, you know, honestly, I don't remember anything that Baba said to me, but I was just flying. I was absolutely flying. And floating off the stage after Baba, you know. So the experiences were there, and Baba was giving a lot of power, you know, to the soul. So but I had this question, you know, which eventually, when I was staying here in GyanSarovar, and Shailu mentioned that when the first series of animations we did was Discover the Spirit Within, this DVD, half-hour DVD of the course, basically. And I did most of the animations on that. In the little room up top of here on the hall, there was Prashant Bhai, Prabhu Bhai, and myself were in this little office doing this whole thing, you know. And it was a great time. It was really sort of like, it was nothing that anyone could imagine. But so during that time, I was living here. I was actually making a coffee down in the kitchen, and I put my hands in the desk, and I got this shock, because I was just came out of some yoga, and I got the shock of my life. And this thought came up from very, very deep down. I mean, it was like an emotional thought that, why wasn't I born with darker skin? You know, and this was a thought that came up, and it sort of shocked me consciously, because it came up from so far down that consciously I thought, well, wow, you know, that was so deep. It came up from such a far place, you know. Then I'd better get an answer for it. And I went straight to Baba while I was just waiting there for the coffee to be made. And I went straight to Baba, and I asked Baba directly, okay, this seems to be very deep down, a very deep question. Why have I taken birth in the foreign land? And the answer absolutely cracked me up. I laughed so loud, you know, because it was like the voice right here, you know. He said, you volunteered. And I thought, I volunteered, and a light went on, you know, of course, you know, because if you're like, because of those memories of being an old Mataji and then coming to Baba and then having to take rebirth, you obviously stop in the subtle region as like a gateway before your next birth, which all the BKs do, all the daddies have done. I mean, everyone does. I mean, all the souls who have left their body in Australia and we've had Borg messages for, they all spend time with Baba before taking birth again, So, and I sort of like, I don't know if it was a memory or it was just my imagination, but I can imagine myself, upon leaving the body and finding yourself in the subtle region, I had this sort of like picture of me sitting there, and then maybe there was a few souls there. I can imagine a few souls there, and Baba asking, okay, who wants to do service in foreign lands? Because I was born in 62, so 1962, so it was the early 60s, so Sakabra Baba was still there. So this was, obviously Shiv Baba was asking who wants to go do service in foreign lands, so I must have put up my hand. Because really, if you think about it, Baba doesn't force any of his children to do anything. He's a very loving father, and he suggests and asks, and but he's very, very, very clever as well, because he knows the interest that we have, so he can ask the right question in order to get the right response. Because Shiv Baba is basically not a mind reader. He says that sometimes in the Sakamurli he says he's Jani Janaha, sometimes he says he's not, So of course, the more subtle we have, the more yoga we have, we can pick up obviously thoughts and intentions of others. Have you ever experienced that? If you've ever been in deep yoga, and then automatically you start to know what that person either wants or is thinking. It's not that you can hear, words in your head or anything like that, but you have this inclination about what they need or what they want. So that's the subtle power of the yoga, And I started experiencing that from the I think it was the late 80s. I had a really nice experiencing walking across the courtyard, and I could hear someone just saying, and it wasn't me, because they were saying basically, I don't want to die, and it wasn't my thought. And I stopped and I thought, wow, that was a very powerful thought. Who was that coming from? And I looked around, and one of the seniors was walking behind me, So it was quite interesting, because they were having health problems, serious health problems. So that thought, and we had just come out of a bhatti, yoga, so in the meditation hall. So when you're in that subtle sort of like state, you can pick up thoughts and intentions. And it's the same with our relationship with Bapdada. When we start to get more subtle, we start to have more yoga, we can start to feel our shift in our relationship, and especially because, if we do carry a bit of karma from past lives, especially with fathers and things like that, like I said before, you can have these things towards Brahma Baba, these issues, and I know from many brothers in Australia, they have a bit of a problem connecting with Brahma Baba, because especially as a father figure, because their lucky father is still alive. You have Shiv Baba, so Brahma Baba is there as a medium, but what relationship can I have with him, So for me, once I'd gotten over that initial sort of anger and things like that, I started to actually think about Brahma Baba's role more, because you have to think about his role, because like Baba says in the Sakamurlis, and even aajkimurlis, there are no Brahma Kumaris without Brahma Baba. His role is so essential, But I found too that as you become more subtle, and as we develop more yoga, and as we become actually soul conscious, then the actual feeling of Brahma Baba being an older brother actually kicks in a lot more, because in terms of pure soul consciousness, we are all brothers, but he is the eldest brother. He is the senior most brother. simply because he's the first human soul. He's the one that's up the top, of the tree, and then there's Mama and the other sort of like souls, that obviously right down to where we all are, So I found that as I practiced soul conscious more and went into the point like state more, I had more of a very, very subtle relationship with Brahma Baba, but not as a father so much, because he's the father of the people, he's the father of everyone. But that sort of title started to soften and melt away and become more of an older brother figure sort of thing, that he is the one with the most experience, not only life experience, but experience with Shiv Baba and the knowledge, So it took me a long while, actually, for me, many, many years, to actually start to ask advice from Brahma Baba, because he's so experienced, And plus, like Baba said in GyanSarovarMurli recently, he's been through, and Brahma Baba said, the storms come to me first. No matter how old he was, all the storms that everyone else sort of like will have in their mind will come to him first, So he's experienced with that. So I found that if anything was coming up, doing service, because I've done a service in a lot of different places and things like that, some obstacles or things like that, then I can ask readily advice Brahma Baba, because he's experienced in handling situations on the physical level, especially the start of the yagya, building the yagya, managing all the children and the buildings and Madhaban, so he has all of that experience. So it took me, took me some time to actually, I guess, I would say, is it humility to actually swallow your pride and actually ask for advice? Because I know in Australia this is a big thing, about asking for help. Even logically, it's a big thing. It's a sign of, they say, it can be, because of body consciousness, a sign of weakness. You're asking for help, but it's not a sign of weakness. It means that you need, someone or something or another view of a situation where you can actually overcome it and then work with it, And I found it actually really helped me to ask Bap Dada together, because Shiv Baba has the raw knowledge of everything that he's taught, but Brahma Baba has of course we hear in the aajkimurli, the application of the knowledge in everyday life, so he has that experience, and so to ask him, for that is a very, it takes, I guess, like I said, it's like swallowing a bit of pride, and that's what I found for me. I had to swallow my pride and just ask, and finally, when I guess when he answered the question about why taking birth in sort of like foreign lands, that sort of like softened everything, sort of like for me anyway, because it answers a very deep question, a personal one, that was obviously there since the very beginning, So for me, now doing service here in Madhaban, I've been staying here. I got locked down in Australia for 2 years, obviously with COVID. We all got locked down, and where I got locked down in Melbourne was the most locked down city in the world. It was very draconian sort of things. But I live at the Baxter Retreat Centre in Melbourne when I'm in Australia. So if you're ever going to get locked down in one of Baba's retreat centres. It's pretty good. It's not too bad. So I felt my heart went out, but because to many BKs, because they have flats, you have to lock down in a box, So I couldn't imagine. I was very, very grateful to Baba being locked down on 20 acres of nature. So with a big retreat centre, and but during that time, during those 2 years, I had a lot of time to think about my relationship with both fathers, together. And I must say, after 2 years, because when Baba said, have an hour in the evening and an hour in the morning and whenever you can, because he's at the start of the pandemic, of course, many Borg messages came about, this virus that's going around and what we should do. And Baba said, use this time for yourself. This time has been given in the drama for yourself. So use it to, propel yourself forward, with your efforts. And I found that because I concentrated more on yoga, an hour in the evening, I was always there, an hour in the morning, and then I started getting up very early. Sometimes I'd wake up at 2, sometimes 2:30, just naturally wake up, and I'd feel awake, so I'd get up and have yoga, And I feel that at the end of the 2 years, I really moved a lot forward in my spiritual efforts, and part of that was getting to know Brahma Baba more and the relationship with Shiv Baba and in the subtle regions, And if any of you know, I've done a few sort of like classes on the subtle regions because, of course, when I came to Baba, as I said, I had a lot of visions, so I had a lot of experiences, and even with Brahma Baba in the subtle regions, and these subtle relationships that we have, our relationship with Baba can improve if we improve our relationships with everyone else, is what I've found, because, Shiv Baba's always said, try and get on with everyone, don't get angry, tolerate, accommodate, if someone wants their own way, then leave it. It's good to be peaceful in yourself and just let them have their own way, but keep your own peace, Don't try and oppose anyone and don't sort of like, come into conflict with anyone, And I found that for me, I heard very early on in Gyan, there was this quote by Abraham Lincoln, this old American president, the best way to conquer an enemy is to make him your friend. This is a fantastic quote. And I heard that very early on. I thought, man, it was a very, very wise sort of thing, So in doing service, I found, and especially doing service in India and for a foreigner, sometimes it can be a little challenging, because, we all have fixed views about many different things, and even in our relationships with Baba. But I found that if we come and meet in the middle, it's like a compromise. It's not your idea and it's not their idea, but you can mold yourself and sort of like work with someone, then you can actually meet in the middle and actually things start moving forward very fast after that rather than coming into conflict. And when I started thinking about that, I started thinking about also, it's like with my relationship with Bap and Dada as well, because if I'm amicable in my relationships in as a Brahmin at the confluence age, then I'm getting full support from Baba, because I'm not opposing others or seniors or, other Brahmins because my idea is better or their idea, I don't like their idea or anything like that. And I found from early on that, everyone views things differently. It's not my idea or their idea, it's just a different solution to the same thing or a different path in order to reach a certain goal, but it might not be the path that I would want, to take. So, and I found that my relationship with Bap Dada became a lot more loving when I found that I worked with others rather than against others. If I'm amicable in my relationships as a Brahmin with all Brahmins and the Brahmin family, then I'm getting extra help from Baba and extra good wishes from Baba, because he sees, your personality is such, and he's mentioned this also in GyanSarovarMurli recently, I think in the last 4 or 5 days, about how some don't get on and there's arguments and things, but Bap Dada loves the souls who actually, are sweet and can sort of like get on with others. And I found that I've had that sort of ability because I've lived in a few centres and quite a few bhavans as well. And of course, Brahmins have karma for the last 2,500 years, and there's a lot of different personalities, very unique personalities with very interesting sort of sanskaras, I found. But I found it very, very interesting, I guess not from a psychological point of view, but from a knowledgeable point of view, that the sanskaras that can affect a soul's thinking right at the end of the cycle from all the karma that we've had for many, many lives, you know, and how it's shaped our thinking right at the end of the cycle, you know, and how we see everything, you know. And and I think because of that and memories from the past, hidden memories, you know, we can find it hard to have relationships with not only Bapdada but with other Brahmins as well, you know, within the family. But I always remember I had this one vision in when I was in a bhatti I came into Gyan and in Bondi in Sydney in Australia, and this Bondi beach is very famous. And a month actually after I came to Baba, Daddy Prakashmani and Mohini, little Mohini, and Gentiben came and visited for a tour of Australia. And I always remember that actually after the program we hired the pavilion on Bondi Beach and Krishna came. So we always have this intoxication that Krishna came on Bondi Beach in Australia, you know. So it was very, very interesting. I was only a month in Gyan, you know. I had no idea what was going on, but we were all clapping, and it was all this. I don't know if you've ever seen when Mohini went into trance and Krishna came, you know. No one's ever seen that. It was, yeah, it's like she becomes very lively, and Daddy Ji has balls and other things to sort of like play with, and they play with Krishna. It's very intoxicating, you know, because the vibration gets very lifted a lot. But in those early days, you know, the relationships that I had, especially at the center, were very unique, and that the bhattis were very unique because in those days we had 2 to 3 hour bhattis, you know. And I had these visions, and one of the visions was I was standing right in front of Mama and Baba, and so were a lot of other Brahmins, and I think they might have been foreigners or just children in general, and Baba was talking about the virtues of the Brahmin family, you know. So that we have to see the virtues of the Brahmin family, because if we see the virtues of the Brahmin family, then we can get to know those virtues and then use them for ourselves and cooperate with everyone. And then as he was talking, we all took this lift, you know, and we all went up, and it all changed, and we were standing on this hill overlooking this Golden Age palace, like we were in the Golden Age on this hill. But this palace was like huge, it was massive, it went for such a long time. And then Baba was talking about that the virtues of the Brahmin family and your relationships, you know, will carry over into the relationships with all the deities, you know, because you have relationships. All the Brahmins we're all becoming deities, so our relationships with each other will carry over into the Golden Age as well, you know. So we will have relationships with each other. So this set me on the path to actually, you know, having relationships, the nice subtle relationship with Shiv Baba and Brahma Baba, but also with Brahmins, you know, which is very, very important, you know. And as I said, during the COVID time, when I had more yoga, my relationship became even more, I think, loving, I can say, you know, and I felt more comfortable in myself, in my relationship with Bap Dada as well as everyone else, you know. And I guess it's also with age, as you get older, you know, a lot of things you used to sort of like worry about and to say, you don't care anymore, you know. Sort of just leave it, you know. So, I mean, it's really, really interesting, the progress that you can see yourself, but it does take a little bit of effort in yoga and churning to actually, like Baba said in that vision, you see the virtues of someone, but you can think about their virtues and think about, and this is what I had to do with Brahma Baba. I had to think about his role, think about his virtues, what he's done, and have that admiration and respect for everything that he did, because he was, he had a lot on his plate, and he didn't sleep much, and he had to have, because he was so busy with children and writing letters, and he had to have yoga very early in the morning to have his own time with Shiv Baba, because he was there, if you like. The children, I don't know, there are lots of mothers here. Children can be very demanding. So if you have hundreds of children, thousands of children, and they all want, either your attention or advice from you and things like that, it can get quite, I guess for parents, it can get a little bit draining of energy. So my subtle experience with Baba has been also one of appreciation lately, of Baba, and going to the subtle region. One of my favorite things, even during the day, I don't have to sit in yoga, is just going to the subtle region and talking with Bap Dada, and talking with Brahma Baba, because he's there all the time now. So he's there for advice. So it's really nice that I can see things in the drama that's happening, and then sort of comment with Bap Dada, or about certain things, and you might actually get a touching or a feeling about something in what to do, and it's quite interesting when you make your yoga that subtle, that you can have that subtle connection and relationship with Bap Dada, but it does require quite a bit of yoga, the subtle yoga. It's not hard. What I call hard yoga is going into the, you sit there and you concentrate, but in the early days, that's how I used to do yoga, because you're inexperienced with having meditation or with having a connection, even with Shiv Baba, and when you become more subtle, the connection is, for me anyway, it's softened, so I don't sit and I don't have to concentrate so readily now. It becomes very natural, and I think that was the 2 years of having yoga in lockdown helped a lot, actually, for that. And so the effort I have now is to continue that, out of lockdown, even when you start to get busy, because during lockdown, not very busy. You go shopping every now and again, or you have to clean your bathroom or something like that, But the centre was closed, because there was no activities allowed at the centre, the retreat centre. So you're just doing day-to-day things. So I think for us to continue that sort of efforts that we did, did everyone make sort of extra efforts during lockdown, because you had that extra time, for some, obviously their work still continued, their lockdown job still continued and things like that. But to continue that during this time now, I think that was a good signal for us to keep doing it, because we can see the world, time's getting close towards the end, this war in Ukraine, all of a sudden it happened, and it can turn at any time, the world, it takes one thing and the whole world, it changes the whole direction of the world. The direction of the world can sort of be going along, and then one sort of thing that happens in the drama, and the whole world has to turn almost in the drama and head in another direction, which of course is all designed to take it further down into chaos. The drama is designed like that, because even though they want a world order and peace in the world, of course, we know that in the drama it's just not possible. The body conscious devices, the greed, the egos of leaders and everyone in that won't allow them to actually get along, But of course, the drama will force them into doing things, you know, which is what's happening, because at the moment the COP27 is sort of happening, you know, and they're all saying it. They're all saying, look, it's like, you know, we're too slow, too late, you know, because of greed, and the society that they've built is run on corporations, greed, profit, and things like that. And of course now the drama and nature is forcing them to do things which they would never have done willingly, sort of like before, you know. So for us, our subtle relationship is more important now with Baba, more than ever, simply because, you know, Baba says at the end, when things get really tough, it will be your subtle relationship, your subtle connection with Bapdada and with Shiv Baba, you know, that will save you, sort of like at the end, because you'll know what to do. You'll get the touching about what to do and where you should go and things like that. And things will happen that, I mean, won't will be surprise a lot of even Brahmins, I think, you know. I mean, I had one vision which was quite interesting, and this is about the end, you know. The vision was I was standing in the basement car park of GCH in London. I was just standing in the basement car park and I was looking up. There's a ramp that goes up and the cars come through, you know, down into the basement. And when I looked up, all this water started pouring in through the opening. It was a huge volume of water, and it started pouring in down the slope and started filling the whole car park in the basement of GCH, you know. And in these visions, I don't know if it's me in the vision or I'm in someone else's shoes, you know, because it's a very interesting, this is a whole nother topic about, you know, things fixed in the drama, that you can see things ahead of time. I mean, because it's fixed, you know, which is what obviously some people have that ability. But I must have been in someone else's shoes, because they said, look, we have to get to the roof, you know, we have to go up, you know. And I looked to the left, and then there's the stairwell, you know, up in the thing. And so I didn't know where that vision was until in 2015. I was doing service in London for 3 months, just some animations for the website. And they dropped me off in the basin. I was standing in the exact spot where I had the vision, looking up at the thing. I thought, whoa, it was here. Because I didn't know where it was before that. It was just this random vision, you know. So, and I thought, wow. So then I Google Earth GCH, and it's 50 meters above sea level, which means the oceans rise at least 50 meters at some point, you know, if the vision is accurate. And I don't give myself visions. Of course, Baba's the only one who has that key, you know. So obviously something happens. And I know in Australia, you know, so many BKs have had visions of these massive waves hitting the east coast of Australia, bigger than cities. You know, the waves were taller than the buildings, you know, just coming through and smashing everything, you know. So because in Australia the Aboriginals have this legend, if you like, and it's called the last wave. It's in something called their dream time, which is actually a memorial of the confluence age. It's quite interesting. And the last wave is the wave to hit Australia, and then all their tribes will move inland. So these sorts of things are due to happen, but so we have to really take care of our subtle relationship with Baba and Bapdada. Sorry, my voice is going. Which is something that happened to me as a teenager. I had an operation on my throat, so I can only talk for maybe 45 minutes before it starts to disappear. Anyway, so that's sort of like my experience with subtle relationships. And does anyone else have sort of like their experience with any tough time having an experience with Brahma Baba and Shiv Baba together, or Bapdada together? Anyone have good experiences? No? No. Different sort, yeah. Yeah. It's because, like I said, everyone's karmic situation is different. Everyone's family situation is different. So everyone's relationship with Bapdada is different, you know. But it's to go deep, I think, into ourselves and our own karma, and try and settle the karma we have, not only through yoga but through understanding that we do have these accounts that might block us from having good relationships with either others or Bapdada, or Brahma Baba, and once we sort of unlock that and have the key to that and unlock it, and it becomes much, much easier, much very sort of like, for me anyway, it was much more loving and much more of an understanding as well. Especially as Brahma Baba, as the older brother sort of thing, Now that I say that out loud, it sounds a bit funny, But if you're in a very, very soul-conscious state, and for me, practicing the point-like state, this was one of the last Murlis of the first time I went to Madhuban. The last Murli was about practicing the point-like state. And you can only reach the subtle state if you practice the point-like state. So for me, when I'm in the point-like state, you can see all, I don't know about anyone else, but I can see like almost all the souls of the world as souls. But also then you can see Brahma Baba as that soul who is like the elder brother. He's the senior most soul. So, but there's also, of course, another relationship with him as, the father of sort of like the people, but also the father of Brahma Kumaris. He's the great, 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 great grandfather, because there's so many generations of Brahmins. So, Bap-dada. So, I think the Hindi word dada actually means grandfather, doesn't it? Yeah. So, but Bap-dada together. So, yeah. So the sister behind you, yeah. You wanted to ask a question?
No, I was just going to say, for me it comes more like a voice, like just when I don't know what to do in my life, should I do that? When it's like somebody else is talking to me and I don't ever know whether it's Brahma or Shiva, but it's like a voice just says, now you go, or now you shouldn't go. It doesn't happen all the time. It happens when I'm not sure what to do. And when I follow it, I do whatever my voice says. And it's not my ear, it doesn't feel like it's my ear. Because it's like I can't make a decision. I get very, should I do this, should I, and I think too much about it. And then at some moment, usually it is after some meditation. I don't know that it's heavy yoga, but it's going within. Then there's like an answer that I get, and I know it's not coming from me, that I would never even thought of. It changes everything.
It's always like that, isn't it? Because a lot of the time, I remember Daddy Janki saying this, I think we overthink things, the knowledge is actually very simple, but we seem to overthink things. And especially sometimes in a situation for us, I've done it all the time, but what I mentioned really, just let it go. But we overthink things and we can't decide whether to do it this way or this way. For me, everyone says, when I tell others, they say, oh, it's because you're a Gemini, You're always in two minds about things, But I don't look at it as in two minds. I look at it as you can do things two ways. Either way works. It's just which is the best way to sort of like to do the thing. And I found that technique that you said, if you step back and just have yoga and have that subtle connection with Baba, then the direction from Baba comes, so you're not interfering with the direction that you should take with your own overthinking, if you know what I mean. So the technique you said, when you step back and you have the yoga and then you seem to get this feeling or hear this sort of like voice that, you do it this way, and that is like the way to actually do it. And that's what we'll have to do towards the end when things get really tough and things will happen fast and quickly. We have to make a split decision. There's no thinking about it, you just have to do it, So this is why that subtle yoga and those subtle relationships are so good with Bap-dada, So overthinking, yeah. Mm. Mm. My mother, Lokik mother, she did the course. I gave her the course. I mean, she was I'm going to say this, she was an old Barossi soul, because I saw a very young photo of her. She had long black hair and a plait. She looked straight out of India, except with just pale skin, because her parents were English, but she looked straight, and she did Hatha Yoga her whole life. She was always up at 5 a.m. doing Hatha Yoga, without sort of like stopping her whole life, And she, before I came to Baba, she was also searching. She went to other ashrams as well. And so she was actually the only support I got when I did the course with Baba and I came to Baba, whereas all the others in the family were against me going, because in the 80s it's this culty, it's a cold, you're going to be brainwashed, all of that sort of stuff, But she was the one who was the most supportive, so we used to sit and talk for hours, about sort of spiritual knowledge, and she knew Baba was coming in Madhuban. But then 6 months after that, she left the body. And I had a very interesting experience, because I was staying in a brother's house. This is in the second year of Gyan, so this is 1987. And I got a phone call at 11 p.m. from my father saying that, this has happened, accident, she actually drowned. So it was things like that. So I thought, well, I'd better go sit in Baba's room. We had a Baba's room. Sit in Baba's room and, give the soul good wishes and all that sort of like support. So I sat down in Baba's room and I sat there and I started having yoga. And like you, there was this voice inside my head. It was very clear. It said, "Don't worry, Baba's done it all." And I thought, Baba's done it all. And then I had this clear, distinct picture that because she got Baba's introduction, she became Baba's child, she had the right to Baba's help, And I thought, wow, that's amazing. Even for such a short time that she had Baba's, she has Baba's help, because she has received Baba's introduction. And then when I went to bed and rolled over, I just felt these arms go around me. So it was like Baba's arms all around me, and I just dropped off to sleep. So it was very, very interesting. It was a very lovely experience, And my Lokik father didn't take any knowledge, but I found out just before he left the body, he died of cancer, that he'd secretly bought all the posters and studied them from one of the centres, because outwardly he was always sort of like a bit sort of like this, and I think that was the typical Australian male. Outwardly they're sort of like, but secretly, they sort of like can sort of, show a soft spot or, intrigue or interest, in something that's not normal per se, So which really shocked me, because he never told me, So it's very, very interesting. So it was an interesting experience with him as well, because I got a touching I was at work and I got a Lokik job, and I got this very strong feeling and touching from Baba that I should go see him. So I went and saw him, and when I was seeing him, because he was like the cancer, he should have left ages ago, weeks ago. The body was nothing left of the body, And so I lay down with him on the bed, and I just discussed death and the soul. I said, "What do you think life is? What do you think?" Because I had to ask him these questions, because he was against me in Gyan, but he had to be open to something, because he knew his time was coming, and he thought that obviously it's not just one life, and this is because he had looked at all the posters as well, that, there has to be something more, otherwise there's no meaning. There's no meaning to life to just that there are 60 years and then gone. What's the point? So, and then he admitted about his attachment to the family, children, wife, things like that. He was in his second marriage. So I could feel that when he admitted all of this, it was a big burden off his shoulders, off his chest sort of thing. So it had released him in some way. And he left the body 2 days later, So obviously just admitting that, and things like that, getting that out, it means you've accepted your fate at that time and that you have to leave, So that was how sort of like knowledge and my parents, So I have an older brother and sister, and my brother left the body about, when was it? 5-6 months ago. So I went back to Australia for a couple of months, saw my sister, and he was a very good born-again Christian. But we used to talk a lot about the cycle, because of course in Christianity the cycle is, the creation is only 6,000 years old, so he firmly believed that it was like that. So we had some good discussions. So, and my sister has a very nice life in New Zealand, so she's not really interested. So, so that's why I actually stay for long periods in Marban, because I'm actually, luckily I don't have much. I mean, I used to work and things like that, but I saved up some money and some inheritance you can get to sort of like sustain you. And I was very lucky in that way. I was very fortunate to be able to do Baba's service here and have this self-taught skill, but it's Baba's fault that I have this skill, because when I came back from Marban in the late 80s, I had no job and no money. So I was sitting there at Amrit Vela saying, Baba, what do I do? If I have to work for the next 25 years, what should I do? Very strong word, very loud. Computers. And this is 1988, something like that. The computers, what's a computer? I didn't know. But the centre had just bought the first ever built PC, called the XT. And so I started learning it in the centre, and then I got a job from that for a year on a huge 8-foot computer. And it just went from that, and then graphics, and then I thought I should learn animation while I was in the Baxter Retreat Centre in 1998. I thought, there's potential here to do service with this thing that's coming up, and I could see it moving forward very rapidly, because computer power was moving forward and animations were moving forward. So I thought if I learned something, we can do some service with it, and sure enough, I think that was Baba's influence as well. So, so Baba's guiding me. If you have that good relationship with Baba, like you said, he can guide you in situations and steer you in a direction, but you have to ask his advice and have that really great relationship with him. Is it? That's traffic control, is it?
शिव पिता को अब याद करो, मुक्ति धाम तुम्हें जाना है। अपने सुकर्मों के बल पर ही सतयुग में तुमको आना है। शिव पिता को अब याद करो। विकराल विनाश खड़ा आगे। अब हम सबका शिव पिता ने बतलाया है। शिव पिता को अब याद करो।
पांडव शिव शक्ति सेना की रणभेरी अब फिर बजती है।
शिव बाबा के ज्ञान से फिर माया को मार भगाना है।
शिव पिता को अब याद करो, सतयुग में तुमको आना है। शिव पिता को अब याद करो, मुक्ति धाम तुम्हें जाना है। अपने सुकर्मों के बल पर ही सतयुग में अब तुम्हें आना है।
धाम में तुम्हें
सतयुग में अब तुम्हें आना है।
धाम में तुम्हें गाना है।
Shanti. I think it's till 12. Yeah, sure. Mm. I think sometimes when you said that, you don't get an answer from Baba, I was thinking that, sometimes Baba, in order to make the child strong and grow up, grow, that he doesn't give advice. He lets the child experience, making their own decisions, I've encountered this in the past as well, for me as well as for other Brahmins in Australia, because that's the one thing when Baba used to meet the Australians, he used to say all the time, is that, because we had no senior, we had Didi Nirmala there, but because, London had, and Europe had Daddy Janki, India had Daddy Prakashmani and the other seniors, so, and the Americas was close to London, but Australia was so far down under that it was away from it. So Baba said that, this is because for you to grow, and he used to tell the Australians this, and stand on your own 2 feet. He said this in order to get your own experience, to make your own decisions, and for you to grow, because we learn from our mistakes. We can review it and say, well, what was I thinking at the time, or what did I do that's not right, and how can I change the aspect of something that didn't work out, because it is, when we look at something, it's not, like Baba has said in many aajkimurlis, it's not failure, it's an opportunity to learn and grow, and many people either in sports or and other places, they all say this, it's not failure, it's actually an opportunity to learn, look what we did and maybe do it a little bit differently, later on. And I think Baba does this so we can grow, so we can actually stand on our own 2 feet and make our own decisions, because it'd be like a child always asking the parent, do this, but they won't learn anything doing that. They won't get their own experience, and sometimes you have to fall in order to get the experience, in order to learn, okay, don't do that, because it can be a little bit painful, and it's the same with little children as well. Sometimes they have to fall down and scrape their knee in order to learn that you can't do that, and that's not the laws don't work like that, that karma doesn't work like that. So with us as well, for our spiritual efforts, sometimes I think Baba just steps back and lets the children sort of experience and learn, and let them make mistakes so that we do learn and we know not to do that sort of like later on, So I think Baba's a sort of interesting teacher as well. He doesn't just, what's that word, mollycoddle the children, give them what they want all the time, because then the children become spoiled and demanding, Isn't that the case with all, like, you just keep giving them what they want, they'll never learn that there are limitations, Yeah, so I think it's like that. Yeah, subtle regions, actually I was thinking more on the subtle regions sort of recently over the last month or two, because I came across this term in science fiction or science, and it's called pocket dimension, and I started to view the subtle regions as like what they call a pocket dimension, because we know the soul world is one dimension, and we know this world, the physical universe, is another dimension. But obviously there's no physical boundaries, because the soul world is spiritual light. It's not a physical place, but it is a dimension. It's a dimension of light. So we have this physical dimension as well, and we know that when Shiv Baba first came down, he created the subtle regions. So he's almost wedged a pocket dimension in between the two dimensions, like a little cocoon dimension, in order to serve Brahmins and obviously create our perfect forms. Because you hear, I don't know, all the stories of Gulzar Dedi when she was young, seeing Avyakt Brahma in the early days, and then Brahma Baba asking, well, ask who he is, because he looks like you, but he's not you. He looks different, So he said, I'm the perfect Brahma. So everyone's perfect form is there waiting, and we can connect with it any time. We all have our light image up there, which is why I guess the visions I had, I'm standing in front of Baba, I was in my light form, just interacting in the subtle regions. But there's no corners or walls or anything like that. It's just white light. But when you see, like I was looking at Baba and Mama and the children, we're all standing, but you're not seeing anything you're standing on, because there's no floor there. I mean, so, and of course, it's all made of light. So Baba can make, and of course you hear some of the trance messages where he's made a garden and he's made this and that. So Shiv Baba can make this all with his mind, so, and project this into the mind of the children, So Shiv Baba, he's God. He made the subtle regions. Brahma Baba didn't make the subtle regions. Yeah. Brahma Baba, Shiv Baba is in control. Don't have two thoughts about that. Brahma Baba tags along, but also, because in the very early Avyakt Murlis, you hear very wonderful Murlis that Shiv Baba and Brahma Baba were having a heart-to-heart conversation, and you hear these conversations, you read about the conversation, because Shiv Baba is still, I'm going to say puppet master, Karan Karav and Har. And he still uses Brahma Baba to do service, just like he did in Sakha form. But now, as he said, Brahma Baba has no physical limitations anymore. Sleep, eat, all of those bodily things. So he's awake 24 hours, so he can use and go and do service anywhere, But in terms of giving messages and things like that, obviously Bapdada are always in sync, because they're so close. Like when Shiv Baba and Brahma Baba, like I said before, you can imagine what Brahma Baba was, if Shiv Baba is speaking the Murli, he's hearing it first, but he must also be hearing it in the mind as well, because Shiv Baba is sitting right beside him, So they're always in sync. But it is Shiv Baba who's in control. And I mean, for me, this is going off anyway. It's a little bit of a story about how much Shiv Baba gets involved with service and the children. I didn't realise it until 2015. I'd finished the service in London, and we went to meet Ramesh Bhai in Mumbai, because it was the start of this animated film they wanted to start. So we wanted some stories from Ramesh Bhai. So Ramesh Bhai had this wonderful story about this. They had made this new exhibition set in Mumbai, and it was Mama's idea. But Brahma Baba wasn't so keen on the new exhibition set, I guess because he must have liked the older one. But they'd made this new exhibition set, so they sent a sister into trance in the centre to get, Baba's final, it's okay, good, go ahead and get them made, So the sister went into trance, and this is Ramesh's story. I hope I'm doing it justice and telling it accurately. This sister went into trance, and she was in trance for a long time, but then they realised that the eyes were just slightly open, but nothing was being said. She wasn't there, and so someone went up. I don't know if it was the sister in charge or Ramesh said, "Are you Baba?" And Baba said, "Yes." And I said, "Baba, why have you come?" He said, "Because children have made a new exhibition set, but they didn't ask Baba about any changes that they should make." So Baba wants to make some small changes. So they brought each picture in front of Baba, and he told them a small change to make in each picture, And then at the end, when he'd finished, they said, "Well, that Baba wasn't really supportive of this idea." And Shiv Baba said, "Don't worry, that child has his own opinions. I'll talk to him." So it must be talking inside, obviously the head, because he can't talk any other way. So then the head yoga and Shiv Baba left, and that story made me realise how much of a hands-on father Shiv Baba is. He's getting involved in service to the point of changing the pictures, that they should be accurate, But Brahma Baba, and then a few days later, apparently Brahma Baba rang the centre and said, "Congratulations on the new exhibition set, it's wonderful," things like that. So obviously Shiv Baba had a word with him, sort of like, in Madhavan. So it was very funny, and it was a very interesting story, about how Shiv Baba, you wouldn't think, because I remember speaking to many Brahmins, he's up there, but he doesn't really do much. He just sort of like inspires the thing. But he has actually a really hands-on dad, So I remember in one of the Sakamurlis, he referred to himself as the dearest dad. I think that was just the translation. I'm not sure if that's accurate or not, but it was quite interesting.
Brahma Baba was saying today that he used to think that he was eating in Baba's remembrance and straight from that, but now he realises that actually Baba is feeding him. It's a subtle difference.
Subtle difference in consciousness. So who's supplying the food? Who's supplying the food, because it's Baba's institution. Without, he created everything, through Brahma, through the children, so everything belongs to Baba. So it is Baba's food that we're eating. Yeah, so Baba is feeding us, So, Om Shanti. Yeah, we know, from the knowledge, the descriptions of the subtle world, that it's the Brahmapuri, which is where Brahma Baba is white light. So, for me, I guess, because since childhood, I've had an active imagination, which is probably why I did graphics and animation, because I can visualize things quite easily. But these things, the visions I had, and then these things I experienced in the subtle regions that Baba was showing, you get to see, I mean, for those who haven't had that, it can be a little bit difficult, but it is just white light. But you can imagine just, maybe you can imagine just Baba sitting there, but ethereal like a ghost. I don't know if anyone's ever seen images of what they depict in movies of ghosts, this ethereal body, that's not solid, but made of light. And we know that it's a white light surrounding as well. So, and lately I've been picturing it not only as this like pocket dimension, but it's like Brahma Baba's description that it's another room off to the side, and you change your dress into your light body, so you change your form into your light body, and you can experience that because it's one of the 5 forms Baba's talked about, the avyakt form. And then put yourself in a room, a completely white room, but it's just made of light, So maybe you can sort of like try and imagine it like that, And then when we went up into the Golden Age has its own level, which is Vishnu Puri, but that's only to show children what the Golden Age is like, There's no room per se, I guess. It's just a level, I guess, there. I mean, I don't know really how Baba made us transition to Vishnu Puri. I have seen Shankar Puri, which is quite interesting, because when I was standing in Shankar Puri, I could see the soul world right there, and I could see the boundary between the subtle world and the soul world. And if I had an arm, if I put my arm up, it would have gone through the boundary into the soul world. That's how close the boundary was, and I could see a slight curve to the boundary. So this must have been the dimensional barrier or curve, because one of the original 3 worlds from very early on showed it as egg-shaped. So it really is like that, it's very accurate. So very curved. So that was quite interesting, I thought. So for me, because I guess Baba's shown me these things, it's easy, but you can, from the descriptions that Baba gives about the subtle regions, you can sort of like start to picture how it is, and Baba will give you a nice experience, I think. So, yeah. Deep silence. If you can't get to the point like stage and in deep silence, if you take yourself to Shankar Puri, because it's the 3rd level in the subtle region, it's like you can still think, but you can still experience silence at the same time. It's quite interesting. It's like a mix. You can stay there and you can sort of like, you can feel that there's silence there, but you're still aware of yourself in like a form, if you know, like, I guess because you're there in your light form, So you're not just the point in soul world, you're there in your subtle body. So you can still experience that silence. And that's the symbol of Shankar, our deep tapasya. Still experience the silence, but there's a form there. Yeah. So rather than just the point. Yeah. Yeah, it's all very, very interesting. I always like this stuff. So, yeah. Anyway, I think that's the signal.
Can you differentiate between the experience of Shiv Baba and Baba Baba, or do you really feel it's Baba?
I I mean, if I go like now, I just went in my thoughts to the subtle world. Just then, I went and I had both standing there, and you can tell the difference. I mean, in thoughts, yes, I think. I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, as long as the advice is great and it works, it doesn't matter who it comes from. But I mean, for me, I think there's a secret in the subtle regions about Brahma Baba that I won't share just yet, because I mean, Brahma Baba is there, but a lot of the time, he's what I get for me is that he is. Like when Daddy Gulzar used to go into trance, or a trance messenger goes into trance, Baba pulls them under. So I think a lot of the time Brahma Baba is under, not aware. And then when Shiv Baba needs him, to do something, then pulls him back out. And I think I know why he does that. From the experience, it was quite, because when I first sort of came across this, when I went to the subtler regions, I first came across this, sorry, it's dragging on a bit, in a butty. I was sitting in the butty, and I found myself almost sitting face to face with Baba in the subtle world, and but it was Brahma Baba. I could tell it was Brahma Baba. And the first question I asked is, where is Shiv Baba? And the answer was, look in front of you. So in the butty, I looked at the sister, and the sister's eyes were very narrow, and then she turned and looked straight at me, and it was like a 2-hour butty. And I think this is how Shiv Baba helps the children, by subtly entering and giving, because he says, when he courses, he needs knowledge to be given or anything like that, he does this, And at the end of the butty, everyone was saying, wow, that was so powerful, that butty, because, Shiv Baba sort of like came there. But that is when I first did distinguish directly between very different thought. You could tell it was Brahma Baba, it was a human thought, sort of like look in front of you, But anyway, that's for another time. Okay. Yeah, the bus is waiting. Yes, that's right. Great. I was told that. So.